Garden of Hope, written by Daphne Bloom, narrated by Alex McTavish and David McNeil.
Chapter 6. Henry. "You can't bring that thing with you," George says, staring intently at Rashi so hard I think a vein in his neck might pop. Rashi climbs from one of my shoulders to the other and chitters, his long tail like a comforting scarf about my neck. "Why not?" I ask innocently. "Rashi is as well-mannered as any house dog." "But he's not a dog, is he?" George says. "He's a squirrel. Vermin. It's not acceptable to bring vermin into another person's house." "Think of it as an easy way to weed through the possible marriage choices," I say, as I pull a biscuit from my pocket and hand it to Rashi. He holds the biscuit in his hands like a tiny human as he nibbles away at it. He's so adorable. "If a woman cannot accept Rashi, then she's not the woman for me." George groans, and I wonder if he's going to pass out in frustration. "I'm sure it's fine, George," Alice says, as she enters the room in a lovely pastel purple day dress. "Beautiful as always, sister," I say charmingly. It never hurts to use a little flattery to get what one wants. "Thank you, Henry," she says. "Shall we go? We are supposed to meet Lady Brunswick for tea in half an hour." "Let's go," George says, ignoring me. "Why are we visiting Lady Brunswick?" I ask, when we are all seated in the carriage, Rashi sitting on my lap, but looking anxiously out the window. "Because I haven't seen her in an age," Alice says. "No, I mean us," I say, pointing to George and myself. "I don't know Lady Brunswick." "And her sister Elise is married as well, is she not?" George adds. "Well, I was going to attend alone," Alice explains, "but as we were making arrangements, she mentioned that her other sister is also with them." "I didn't know Lady Brunswick had another sister," George says. So it begins, I mumble to myself. I thought that the matchmaking would be constrained to balls and formal dinners. I didn't know that our very first tea out upon arrival would be an attempt to find me a wife. "I don't know that I've ever met her," Alice says. "She would have come out only after the rest of us were married, so we've probably never been in the city at the same time before." "What's she like?" George asks. "Well, if she's anything like her sisters, I'm sure she's the best of ladies. Beauty, grace, and lots of money." "That rules her out of having any interest in me, then," I say. "Her name is Lily," Alice says. "Do be polite." The carriage comes to a stop in front of a large house in Belgrave Square. Honestly, we could have walked the short distance from Chester Square, where our city residence is located. It's a mere half-mile away. It is quite hot, so I suppose Alice didn't want to risk us arriving smelling as if we'd just ridden over on horseback. "Is Lord Brunswick a duke?" I ask. Considering the neighbourhood, I think he must be. "He is," Alice says, "but this is the home of her parents. Her father is the Earl of Pembroke." I sigh again. If Lily is an earl's daughter, that is another reason for her to reject me. Even though we would be of equal station, she wouldn't want to settle for a broken second son, I'm sure. But I keep my grumblings to myself for the moment, as we are already up the steps and entering the front door, held open by a butler. The butler starts when he sees Rashi on my shoulder, but he then shrugs it off. "I am to show you all to the garden," the butler says, after he takes our hats and other sundries. A footman offers to take my cane, thinking it is nearly ornamental. "I'm afraid I must keep that with me," I say. I'm sorry, my lord," he stammers, his cheeks reddening. "No trouble at all," I tell him as I follow the butler, George, and Alice through the house to the terrace at the back of the house. The garden is similar to ours, green, lush, with smartly paved paths that encompass small garden plots. After a moment, though, I realise that it is much more beautiful than ours. There are several varieties of flower in bloom despite the heat. The small bushes are trimmed into interesting shapes. The few trees that grow large enough to offer shade seem perfectly spread out, so that they both provide relief from the sun, but don't make a person feel crowded, or that they are in a wild wood. In one corner, I spy a tiny white cottage with large glass windows that must serve as a greenhouse, and I can see someone moving around inside. Rashi runs down my leg and under a bush to explore. "And this is my brother Henry," I hear George say, and I turn to see that I've been introduced to two lovely ladies, one heavy with child. The other one offers me her hand, and I kiss the back of it. "Charmed," I say. "Likewise," the woman says, "and my sister Elise, Lady Torrington." I greet her as well. So the first woman must be Constance. We have not, then, been yet graced with the presence of the marriageable sister, Lily. I suppose she is preparing to make a grand entrance. "And your other sister?" Alice says. "She seems to have wandered off again," Constance says lightly, but there seems to be a hint of something tight in her voice.